Now, what I want to do, I want to show you few games played by Bobby Fischer. Of course, everybody familiar with his My 60 Most Memorable Games. But the games I want to show you, they are not the best of his games. There are some critical games and some games that show his genius, or how talented he was. And these games are, I think they are most memorable for me, at least. Now, get the board, and I want to share with you some of most interesting games of Bobby Fischer.
When talking about Fischer's games, when I was preparing to choose some of his most interesting games, I had great difficulties. I had a lot of games to choose from, and at the same time, I did not want to take his most famous wins. No, I picked the games according to my own taste and according to originality of Fischer's play. This may not be, they are pretty good games and very, very high quality games, but may not have been his best games. But the criteria I chose was his originality and amazing preciseness. Oh, those are, to me, are very exciting and very powerful games. Well, as you know, when you say best games, there is always there is no set criteria that you can go by. So this is my opinion, and objectively I think they're one of the best games that ever been played in chess. Well, let's take them in random order. This was played in interzonal tournament in 1967 against Mongolian player. At that time, he was pretty strong international master, Myanmar Suren, and it was played in 1967, French. As you know, Fischer played many games against French defense. He's never played it himself, but himself with black French defense. But normally he plays d4. But in this game, Fischer played d3, d5, and so-called King's Indian attack. Knight d2, knight f6, g3, c5, bishop g2, knight c6, knight f3, bishop e7, white castled, and black castled. e5, knight d7, rook e1, b5, knight f1, b4, h4, a5, bishop f4, a4. Now, this position is very typical for King's Indian attack players. I've played this myself, and normally you go here with knight g5, preparing queen h5, and forcing black to play h6 at some point. What Fischer did here, he played a3. He tried to slow down black's counterattack. a3 is not necessary move. We could have played knight g5, but anyway, Bobby played a3, b takes a, b takes a, and knight to a5. Black is preparing c4 to organize some play on the queen side, and after d4 maybe c3, trying knight c4. Well, knight a5 was played for that reason. Knight e3, After knight e3, bishop a6, bishop h3, d4, and knight to f1. So temporarily center is closed, but black could have played here c4 and give up the pawn. Maybe would have been the best chance, but black underestimated white's attack on the queen side and played knight b6, putting knight on d5. Knight g5, knight d5, and bishop d2. Now let's see the intensity with which Bobby played this attack. He was 14 years old, and this is one of the most powerful and most direct assault on a king side you can ever see. After bishop d2, bishop takes g5, bishop takes g5. Well, possibility is h takes g with idea of going knight h2, knight g4, and knight f6. But bishop takes g5 is what Bobby chose, and queen d7 and queen h5. Here, it's obvious that white wants to go knight h2, knight g4, and checkmate black's king. Rook f to c8 was played. I don't like this move. I think better was c4, because this is absolute emergency for black, which when they realized was already too late. Rook f to c8, knight d2, and here is knight going to e4. After knight d2, I think black's position is lost. Knight c3. And from now on, it's hard to see, hard to imagine that black will be busted in a few moves. Bishop f6, very strong. Now g takes f loses. Well, I don't know how much Mr. Marsuren was calculating when he didn't take the bishop, but I'm sure Bobby saw it all through, and this is actually very powerful attack and very powerful way to continue this. If gf was taken, then after ef and king h8, how does white continue? Bishop f5. This is the key move of the combination, and I'm 100% sure Bobby saw it all. Bishop f5, bishop has to be taken, and now rook e7, queen d8. Now on rook takes f7, maybe queen g8, but now knight f3 and knight g5, and on queen g8, knight g5. And now on queen g6, knight takes f7. This is all forced, and after king g8, white simply can exchange queens, go knight e5, and you see there is a forced mate threat by rook g7, followed by knight takes g6 check and f7 check. So black's move rook a7 is forced, and white can simply take on a7, and after bishop b7 take another piece, and white is easily winning. Actually, this is the variation. It's very complex combination that was I'm saying that I'm 100% sure Fischer saw it all, and I'm not sure about his opponent. It could have been that his opponent was aware of it. Well, bishop f6 is very, very strong move, and here there is no defense for black. So if g takes f loses, then queen g5 is threatening. So queen e8 was played. Now knight e4. And as you can see now, knight g5 is a threat, knight d6 is a threat, and black is forced to take. Now rook takes e4. You see the rook is coming too now. Of course, this is totally lost now. g6, queen to g5, not queen h6 because queen f8, queen to g5, and c4. Now, I'm sure there are several different ways to play to win this position, but it's amazing how Fischer finds the shortest way. At this age, at the age of 14, he finds the shortest, most precise, and most effective enforcing way. h5, c takes d, rook h4, rook a7. Well, why not d takes c? Actually, rook a7 was played, and bishop g2. Well, now he did play rook d takes c. Well, he could have played d takes c immediately. And here comes the idea why it would, in this position, white play bishop g2 and not simply take on d3. If take on d3, then black's bishop comes for help, if it counts for anything, but bishop g2 is amazingly effective and absolutely devastating in this position, because after d takes c, queen h6, it's a forced mate. What does bishop have to do on g2? Because on queen f8, queen takes h7 check. Every move is forced. King takes, pawn takes g6 double check. On king h8, rook h8 mate, and king takes g6, bishop e4 mate. That's why bishop g2. And after h takes g, black simply resigned here. Very powerful game. Maybe not difficult attack, but it's not difficult to attack in those positions, but it's how precise and how like a surgical precision was made in this attack. It's absolutely great game in my opinion. Now, next game was played against American Sam Schweber, was a very strong player at that time. It was played in 1970. Bobby was then 17 years old. He was already one of the top players in the world, and it was played. Game was played, I believe, he was played in Argentina. This is one of my most favorites and always has been. I remember when in 1970, well, I was then 16 years old. When the game was published, I was closely following all the strong players, and especially Bobby Fischer. When I saw this game, then it was like enormously influenced me. I always was following and amazed with Bobby Fischer's preciseness. I never tried to copy his style, because copying, I knew better than that. Copying anybody's style is a bad mistake, because that's how you cannot alter your brain. So your style is one, his style is the other one. Admiring, yes. Copying, no. A lot of people tried, and even Americans, some IMs I know, they tried to copy Bobby Fischer's games and play exactly like this. No one has ever succeeded. No one has ever succeeded at copying anybody's style in the world. Well, they tried to copy Spassky style, Tal style, that simply does not work and never will. I don't believe in it. So anyway, let's look at the Bobby's game against Sam Schweber. E4, E6. D4, D5. That's again, it's French defense. Bishop B4, E5, C5, A3. Bishop takes C3. Pawn takes C3. Queen C7, knight F3. Knight C6, bishop E2. Well, the game is developing in a slow phase now. Bishop D7, castle. Knight G7, A4, trying to put bishop on A3. Knight A5, rook E1. C takes D, knight C4. Bishop D3. H6, knight D2, trying to eliminate the pasty knight on C4. Well, actually, what white may do next, maybe they will take this knight with a bishop and go knight E4, trying with knight D6 and bishop A3. Schweber, in this position, simply played knight takes D2, bishop takes D2, and knight C6. From now on, Fischer played this game absolutely flawlessly, and that's what amazed me, his preciseness in getting a positional advantage and ending with some tremendous combination. Queen G4, G6. Rook E3. You see how he is very direct. He wants to go rook H3 or rook F3, having very strong attack. Castle. Rook G3. King B8. Rook F3. Rook G3 might have been a mistake. Maybe Rook F3 was better right away. But this is the type of position which is closed, and I don't think this tempo makes big difference. But I want to tell you, Fischer he did not play Rook F3 in this position. He played Rook G3. But on King B8, it's a Rook F3. Now he played with King on B8. This is absolutely genius. And the reason why he provokes Black for the next combination, but he calculated a lot further. A combination would not have been possible with King on C8. The combination is possible only with King on B8. F5 was played by Schweber, and that's what Fischer was waiting for. Obviously, Queen F4 or Queen H4 is out of question because of G5, and Queen takes G6 also out of question because in all these cases, D4 pawn falls. So that's what Fischer was waiting for, F5, and he played en passant, and now E5. And Black wants to go E4, but also they want to play knight takes D4. And look at this, how deep Fischer calculated this. Queen G3, of course he was expecting knight takes D4, and now Rook E3. You see the E5 pawn is hanging, and Black is in bad shape here because on the move that Schweber played, and I'm sure Schweber calculated, it looks very good for Black. Now, the bishop is hanging. If bishop moves, then C2 pawn is hanging. But rook takes E4. This is the key of Fischer's combination when he played rook to f3. Well, this, when he played rook to f3, that was, after that, it was all calculated. Now, rook takes c4, queen takes g3. Obviously, taking rook immediately is not good because of bishop f4. And now, what can black do but take the queen? And now rook takes d4. This is the key of whole combination. What happens here? Why this combination is so powerful? Well, white has only one minor piece for the queen. Black cannot maintain queen because white is going to play bishop f4 next move. So what is here for black to do? After queen takes g3, rook takes d4, queen g4 was played. Because if queen goes anywhere else, then black has to give its queen for the bishop. Here, at least they will get the rook. Rook takes g4, bishop takes g4. Now, what did white do here? Let me explain you why this game is so much a favorite of mine. This game is my favorite game because it's not only the way he set up the combination, the trap for combination, it's how combination work with tremendous tactical shot and with Fischer's ability to evaluate the final position of the combination being exchanged down as favorable for him. Bishop takes g6. And so all this long combination and setup was for this position where white has 2 pawns for exchange and winning position. Actually, it's not winning, it's just better for white. Rook h2 g8, bishop h7, rook h8, bishop d3, rook d to e8. And here, Bobby played f7, and on rook e7, played f8 queen. Idea after rook takes f8, bishop b4, getting the exchange back, and rook ff7, bishop takes c7, rook takes c7, and all this ended up with extra pawn for white, and I should say this is an easily winning position, and the rest is not as important. This is technically win position, f3, king f2, and white starts pushing these pawns, and game was over very shortly. This is one of my most favorite games ever played in chess. Beautiful combination, absolutely impeccable evaluation, and great execution in the end. This is one of the best games I think ever played, and I am very much amazed why this game did not get recognition as one of the best games ever played. To me, it was. Well, next game I want to show you, it's a short game, but this is like theoretical preparation. What is the favorite parts of this game? This is actually very famous game, and it was mentioned as famous game, and I share this opinion. And this game was played against Paul Benko in 1963. Bobby, 20 years old, and this is one of the best games I think you can see also. e4 g6, d4 bishop g7, knight c3, d6, f4. This is Fischer's favorite variation in Pirc defense. f4, knight f6, knight f3, castle, bishop d3. This is all theory. Well, c5 is one of the moves in this position. Knight a6 is the other move. Bishop g4 is mentioned in theory. It is not a very good move. And Fischer perfectly illustrated it why it's not a best move. h3, bishop takes f3, queen takes f3. Knight c6 was played. Bishop e3. And here, black is forced to go e5. Black is forced to go e5. Otherwise, if white plays e5, black is going to have absolutely awful game. e5 was played. D takes c, d takes c, and f5. Well, now center is closed practically. D file is open, but it's very difficult to do something for black on D file. White wants to go g4, g5 and organize very strong attack on knight d4. Actually, knight d4 simply queen f2. Knight does not really do anything on d4. So what happened in this position? Benko played g takes f. It's an interesting approach to this position. After g takes f, of course, on e takes f, there may be e4 played by the black, and they may have very good position. On knight takes e4, maybe knight e5, and black is doing very fine. So white is forced to play queen takes f5, knight d4, queen f2. Again, queen takes e5 is not good because of knight g4, queen f2, and now white simply wants to castle and attack the king side. After queen f2, knight e8, castle, knight d6. You see, f5 square is not accessible for white, but black has bad position. What is amazing about this game is how quickly black's position deteriorated and how quickly they got totally lost. Queen g3, king h8, obviously bishop h6 is a threat possible, king h8, and now queen g4, c6, queen h5. That's where Fischer wanted his queen. And after queen h5, white simply wants to play rook f2 and rook f1, or maybe bishop takes d4, ed, followed by e5. Well, here is what happened. Interestingly enough, queen e8 was played by the black. And here what Benko was thinking, that if bishop takes, pawn takes, and white goes e5, attacking h7 pawn, threatening mate, then f5 will be played. See, attacking white's king, and knight is attacked on c3, queen takes e8, knight takes e8, and black is alive. That was Benko's calculation, but Fischer quickly, in a few moves, he refuted it. Bishop takes d4, e takes d, and now mind-blowing shot, rook f6. Idea of this move is very simple. Blocking f7 pawn. If bishop takes f6, e5 will be quick mate, and otherwise is threatening e5. Only move not to get mated quickly is king g8, e5, threatening checkmate, h6, and now simply knight e2. And in this position, black resigned, because threat is rook takes d6 simply. And it's interesting that if white played rook takes d6, then queen takes e5, and white cannot maintain extra piece, because rook is hanging on d6 and knight is on c3 hanging. But knight e2 was very precise move, and now knight is hanging, and black is losing a piece because knight cannot move anywhere because of queen f5, followed by checkmate on h7. You see how simple it was, and how direct, but it was done all very accurately, very precisely, and he never left black a chance to defend his king's position. Well, next game I want to show you, it's actually very interesting. It was played by Fischer in 1959. He was 15, 16 years old, and he was playing at that time against one of the best players in the world. Not that he wasn't one of the best players himself. He played in candidates tournament, in World Championship candidates tournament against Paul Keres, 1959, and Bobby actually was black. Let me tell you a little story about that tournament. When this was played, well, actually Bobby was black. We're gonna reverse the colors here. When Fischer was playing this tournament, he had only one goal. He had a goal to win this tournament, even though he wasn't ranked in a top 3 to win this tournament, because all the Soviets played in the same tournament, and that's why Fischer was complaining, well, not without a reason, that when it comes to the end of the candidates tournament, where big majority are Soviet players, close to the end of the tournament, they will start throwing games to each other to make sure that no foreigner has any chance. Well, actually, it was discussed by FIDE, it was debated, and shortly after, all World Championship structure changed, and they stopped playing candidates tournaments. They started playing candidates matches. So heads-up matches, so where there's no game throwing can possibly take place. Well, here is the game. d4, Fischer is black, knight f6, knight f3, g6, bishop f4, bishop g7. Now, why do I like this game so much? I like this game because, let me tell you a little story. Especially to me, they are so priceless. This game is so priceless because to my students, I always explain, remember, no pawn hunting in the opening. Development, quick development is the key of every opening. And remember, so when you are ahead in development, quickly open position for any cost. That's what I preach all the time. And this is the perfect example on that. And was played against one of the top players in the world, because chess rules and ideas and principles, they don't discriminate. They work the same way against beginner, against mediocre player, against the top player. Well, let's go on with the game. After bishop f4, bishop g7, knight d2, c5, c3, c takes d, c takes d, d5. And in this position, Keres should have played simply e3, but white violated the main rule. White went pawn hunting. Well, of course, Keres knew all that pawn hunting is not good in a very early stage of the opening, but this is a borderline decision. White played bishop takes b8, rook takes b8, queen a4 check, bishop d7, queen takes a7. This is a borderline decision because white is not that far behind in development. How far they are? However they are. So now, normally black should maybe castle and try to go knight e4, e5. Well, Fischer played here knight to e4. Idea is to stop queen's retreat to c5 and maybe play rook a8 followed by queen b7, rook b8 and taking b2 pawn. Well, knight e4 was played in this position, and e3 obviously. And Fischer knows that time is most important factor in this game. So he played simply knight takes d2, knight takes d2, and e5. Here, exactly what we talked about. There is no time for castling because bishop is going to develop and white is going to castle soon too. So e5 was played. Black has to start worrying about his king. Now, if d takes c, bishop takes e5, and on queen a3, protecting pawn, maybe queen f6, white has serious problems. So white decided to keep position closed as much as they can. Castle, and after knight b3, castle, and now queen c5. Trying to retreat the queen. Queen a5 was not possible because black simply can exchange and get the pawn back on d4. After queen c5, rook c8, queen b4, rook e8. It's a perfect and beautiful position for black. Black is fully developed, placed all its pieces on the best positions. But for full happiness, white needs to castle. But how to castle? That's not that easy. Bishop e2, e takes d. Of course, e takes d is bad because bishop is pinned and white will probably never castle. Knight takes d4. And now queen h4. Bishop is on e2. Queen h4. Again, preventing white from castling, because on castling will be bishop takes d4, and e2 bishop is loose. You see how, like, one move away from castling, but that will never happen. Queen h4 and queen takes b7. Bishop takes d4, queen takes d7, and bishop takes b2. white is one move away from castling, but never really had a chance to castle. Rook d1, bishop c3, check, king f1, and d4. Just as I said, so your open position, pawns don't matter now. White plays with a rook down, practically, bad king position, and no coordination of the pieces. So after d4, e takes d, queen to e4, queen to g4, queen to c2, and g3. Queen takes a2. Now this position is better for black. White still has problems finishing development, and the correct move probably was bishop to f3. But bishop b5 was played. This is an instant loser. Instant loser. Bishop b5, queen d5, attacking bishop and the rook. Bishop takes e8. And now simply queen takes h1, king e2, rook takes e8 check, king d3, and bishop to e1. You see, the bishop is hanging, queen is hanging. Simply bishop e1. Black has an extra piece, and on that level you don't play with the piece down. For some people, maybe game starts now with piece, but not on the highest level. And Keres resigned. Now, this by far wasn't Bobby's best game. No, because he had some absolutely mind-blowing games. But this is very typical. This is, as I said, they're not the best games. They're my favorites. This is very instructive game, how not to start pawn hunting and how to open positions very quick before opponent castles when you are ahead in development. Actually, you have to notice that on the lower level, pawn hunting most of the time works. And it's interesting. Why? Because it's easy to grab a pawn, but it's difficult to open position very accurately and precisely and on time and finding winning combinations. That is a lot more difficult part. But this game shows how to punish pawn hunters in early stage of the game. In 1956, he was not even 13 years old, and he played game in U.S. Open against local master Peter Lapican. So knight f3 was played, and Bobby didn't have an established opening repertoire because there was no one he was studying with and no one could recommend him what to play. So what Bobby did then, he played every opening. So he was picking up some ideas, he was playing every opening, but he was extremely talented, and by then, in today's standards, he was established grandmaster. So knight f3, knight f6, g3, d5, bishop g2, bishop f5, castle, e6, d3. That shows Bobby's love for King's Indian defense. He used to play King's Indian defense throughout his chess career, and here he is playing King's Indian attack, same thing but for white. d3, c6, knight d2, knight a6, a3, knight c5, c4, b5. That's not a good idea. It's not a good move. What black should have done is continued with development, castling, bishop e7, followed by castling. But b5 move weakens b5 and c6 squares, you see. Knight d4 move attacks c6 and b5. Queen d7, protecting. Now knight takes f5, pawn takes f5, and this position is already very, very bad for black, because you see d5 pawn becomes weaker, and bishop g2 may soon be opened on the very important diagonal. Knight b3, h6, trying to prevent bishop g5, which will put pressure on d5 pawn. h6, but black, as you can notice, is already way behind in the development. Bishop e3, knight e6, now knight d4, attacking f5 pawn. g6, queen b3. I think black is already lost. Now they have big problem completing development. They should have done it a while ago, and now after queen b3, rook b8 was played, simply protecting b5 pawn. Positionally very well played by white for now, for 12-year-old boy. And here comes the combination that will needed precise calculation. Knight takes c6. Well, obviously, on any move like dc, white will simply take the rook. So queen takes c6 is forced. C takes d, and now black is totally lost. White wants to get the piece back. Knight c5 was played, but that should have been calculated by white, and Fischer did so. He played queen c3, and now we see the queen is hanging, knight is under attack, and the other knight is under attack. After queen d6, bishop takes c5, queen takes c5, queen takes f6. Black simply resigned. They are 2 pawns down, and they are not developed, and on top of everything, they're losing the rook, one of the rooks. Rook on h8 is hanging, and if rook moves, then white wins the other rook on b8. And here black, of course, resigned. Now it seems like very, very simple game, but I've been coaching chess for so many years, and I can tell, if I saw a 12-year-old boy played such the harmony in this game of white's development and strategy and calculation, this is already signs of a very, very strong player, potentially maybe one of the best players. And it is, as I can point, altogether there were no very hard to find moves. But you see, at the age of 12, he was accomplished chess player, very strong. Now, in the same year, later in that year, he played Bobby played game against one of the strongest players, in the United States, Donald Byrne, and he beat him. Then he played most of the top American players. He's totally dominated them. He became U.S. champion several times. And let's see the game Bobby played against Donald Byrne. The game was played in New York in 1956 also. Knight f3, knight f6, Bobby Fischer is black, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, d4, castle, bishop f4, d5. Now, this is Grunfeld defense that Fischer had many great victories later in his career with this opening. Queen b3, d takes c, queen takes c4, c6. Now, this is not the best move in modern theory. One of the better moves are knight a6 with the idea to go c5, but c6 was chose by Fischer. E4, knight bd7, rook d1, knight b6, and here Donald Byrne played queen c5. I'm not crazy about this move. I would prefer queen b3, but it's very difficult to criticize somebody for a move like queen c5 because it doesn't do any immediate damage. I would prefer to play queen b3 to stay out of reach, to keep the queen out of reach of black's pieces. Queen c5 was played, bishop g4, and here Donald Byrne made one mistake, bishop g5. This was enough for Fischer to completely annihilate his opponent with one mistake. Now we're talking about 13-year-old boy, and it's hard to detect any problem, any combination in this position. But from now on, black has big advantage, and Fischer uses all his tactical and positional skills to convert it to a win. Knight a4, it's tremendous, extremely powerful move that gives black an advantage. After knight a4 and long calculations, white chose queen a3. What will happen on knight takes a4? This is actually a great combination, very thematic. After knight a4 will be knight takes e4. Well, it's obvious that white cannot just retreat the queen because black is going to take knight on f3 and then bishop on g5. And if white goes queen to c1, queen c1, the idea of queen c1 is to protect the bishop on g5, but then on queen c1 will be queen a5 check, knight c3, and the same, bishop takes f3, followed by knight takes g5. So white will lose a pawn or have very bad position in both cases. So what white played on knight a4 is simply queen a3. Queen a3 was played, and now knight takes c3, b takes c, and knight takes e4. After bishop takes e7, queen b6. Now, anybody can play combination, but when we're talking about young kid playing this and seeing, I know that he saw the outcome that he is going to have to sacrifice the exchange, and he assessed with his tremendous positional understanding that if he gives an exchange 4 moves later, he is going to have big advantage. This already tells you that you have potential world champion when 13-year-old boy plays game like this. And in this position, after queen b6, white played bishop c4. Now, what would have happened if they simply took the rook? If they took the rook, bishop takes f8, queen b3, and now knight takes c3. White is exchange up, but totally busted. Queen takes knight is not possible because bishop b4. And rook e8 check is threatening, and if queen takes queen, then pawn takes, and now you see the rook is coming to a2, white rook is hanging, and rook e8 is threatening, not to mention bishop b4. White is absolutely unconditionally busted. So in this position, Donald Byrne, of course, did not take the rook on f8, but he chose to play in this position. There are several moves. Queen b3 is one of them. Queen b3 is one of them, but it's not necessarily good because white simply takes and goes rook e8. So bishop c4 was played. After bishop c4, knight takes c3. Now this is very strong. There comes shot after shot and extremely powerful game, maybe one of the Bobby's best games, and it's amazing. I have my best games, and every top player in the world has best games. Even regular chess players have the best games, but I don't know who I can point what chess player had his best games played at the age of 13. Now knight takes c3. Of course, on queen takes c3 will be rook e8, and black is easily winning. Bishop c5 was played, and here comes another shocker. Rook f8 and king f1. Well, this had to be all calculated by black. Black may play knight takes d1, and they have good compensation for queen, but next Fischer's move was also foreseen by him before the combination was played. Bishop e6. Extremely a powerful and effective move. White is attacking, black is attacking white's bishop, undermining that queen is hanging. Now, if white plays bishop takes bishop, then strangely enough they get checkmated by queen b5 check, king g1, knight e2 double check, king f1, knight g3 double check. You see, white king cannot go to e1, and on king g1, queen f1 check, rook takes f1, knight e2 checkmate. It's actually one of the it's a variety of the smothered mate. And of course, because for this reason, it cannot be taken. The bishop cannot be taken on e6. So knight is on c3 in this position. Bishop cannot be taken on c6, and white decided to take the queen. But after bishop takes b6, there comes quick end. Bishop takes c4, king g1 knight e2 check, king f1, knight takes d4 check, king g1, knight e2 check, king f1, knight c3 check, king g1, and now Fischer simply takes the bishop. Now let's calculate. Right now black has two minor pieces for the queen, but you see the queen is hanging and rook is hanging, so black is gonna lose the rook. After queen b4, rook a4 was played. So many in between moves. We see the combination played by the, by the top player, or I would say maybe by the computer. But we didn't have chess computers then, of course, and this is amazing combination with amazing preciseness was played by Bobby. Queen takes b6, knight takes d1, and now black has overwhelming positional and material advantage. h3, rook takes a2, king h2, knight takes f2, and we don't have to see the rest. In a few moments, in a few games, Donald Byrne resigned. This game was seen in all over the world, and world recognized that we have potential world champion. This is one of Fischer's best game. Now, next game I want to show you is very memorable, at least to me, because Bobby played this game against Mikhail Tal, who was on much higher level than higher ranked in the world, and he played Bobby, and Bobby had actually bad score at that point against Tal, but Bobby was young, raging world champion. Well, he potentially world champion when Tal was in the peak of his career. This game was played and Bobby was white. e4, c5. Now, the reason why this game is so memorable, because here Bobby refuted opening theory created by the Soviet chess players. And Soviet chess players is like a group of 20 or 30 top grandmasters against one lone Bobby Fischer. Look how he refuted the opening theory. e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, cd, knight takes d4, e6, knight c3, queen c7, g3, knight f6. Now, the normal move in this position is a6 and bishop g2, but they said you can play also knight f6. And Bobby proved that knight f6 is a mistake because knight b5 was played. Now if black queen has to move, on queen a5, bishop d2 is highly unpleasant. But queen b8, that's what they normally should play in this type of position. Bishop f4. And now black has a choice to go e5 and weaken d5 square. White can simply play bishop g5 or play knight e5. That's what happened. After knight e5, the move was played by Fischer was never anticipated by theoreticians and by people who had some involvement in developing theory of this variation. Bishop e2 is highly illogical, but a very powerful move. It looks like a weird looking move. Bishop e2. Why should you play g3 and then develop bishop on e2? That's something very weak player would do. But Bobby played this move, and after this move, black has problems they cannot solve. Bishop c5 was played by Tal, but let's see why. Of course, bishop e2 protects. Simply, white wants to play queen d4 to prevent knight f3 check. But bishop on g2 could have done the same thing. But bishop on e2, as we can see later, is a lot stronger. Bishop e2 and bishop c5 was played by Tal. However, a6 was possible. What would have happened on a6? Queen d4. Very strong move. Now d6 has to be played. And now rook d1, attacking d6 pawn. If black takes pawn on b5, after bishop takes e5, black is totally busted. Of course, no de because queen d8 checkmate. And that's why in this position a6 was bad in this position. So after bishop e2, bishop c5 was played, and another very strong move by white. Bishop takes e5, queen takes e5, and f4. It looked like white wanted to play on dark squares. So if white wants to play on dark squares, why would they give dark square bishop away? To gain tempos. Now, you see why. Now queen b8, e5. And black's knight does not have any good square, so black played a6. After ef, ab, fg, rook g8, knight e4 was played. Now knight e4 forces bishop e7 because there is double threat of taking knight and going knight f6 check. Bishop e7 is forced. Now queen d4, temporarily protecting the g7 pawn. Rook a4, knight f6 check. Of course, king d8 is not possible because queen b6 simply wins the game. After queen c7, you see the rook will be hanging in the end. So after knight f6 check, black takes, white takes, and now you can see that position is totally lost for black. Totally lost. Queen takes f6, queen c7. Now Bobby castles queen side. Rook takes a2. King b1. No move like queen a5, of course, will not do anything because simply b3 can be played, and queen protects the a1 square. And after king b1, rook a6, bishop takes b5, and it's almost over. Now rook b6, bishop d3, threatening bishop takes h7, e5, attacking the queen. So why black is trying to exchange queens and to play with a pawn down endgame. But after e5, extremely powerful shot here. F takes e, rook takes f6, pawn takes f6. Now, this is one of the best games I have ever seen. In this position, black has no defense from bishop takes h7, and black is totally lost. So to me, it was very, very impressive. What happened in this position? Queen c5 was played, bishop takes h7, queen g5, bishop takes g8, queen takes f6, rook f1, queen takes g7, bishop takes f7. We don't want to see the rest because white simply has here two extra pawns with overwhelming position, and it's interesting to point bishop on c8. I think a player, attacking player like Tal never had bishop like this in so late stage of the game, almost in the end of the game, when he has no other pieces but bishop on c8 still locked by his pawns. Extremely powerful performance by Bobby. So this showed again that this game actually was played when Bobby was about 17 or 18 years old. It was played in Bled in Yugoslavian city in 1961. But at that point, Fischer already was one of the contenders for the World Championship title. Going to next game. Now, next game was played. This is actually not very well publicized game, but to me it was, I think, very typical for Bobby Fischer. Normally, young players only, they like to attack for any cost, and to Tal was an exception. Tal was the same style for whole his career, but not too many other players. Bobby played then for initiative only, and playing for initiative, he became world champion. He dominated all his opponents from 56 to 72 by playing very, very active games, and was always outcalculating and outplaying opponents. Next game was played in 1970, a couple of years before he became world champion. But this was in interzonal tournament. He was on halfway to his world championship title, and I think this game was very memorable to me. It was played against Addison. Addison was, I believe it was American international master, strong player. Queen takes d5. Bobby is white, knight c3. Queen d8. d4. Knight f6. Bishop c4. Bishop f5. Now, normally before black goes bishop f5, they go c6 first. Now, after bishop f5, what Fischer did here, he didn't want to develop normally. He wanted to prove that this is kind of a way he can take advantage of black's move order. So he played queen f3, attacking f5 bishop and b7 pawn, forcing black to play queen c8. Now he went bishop g5 with total disregard for the pawn to c2. Bishop takes c2. Rook c1. Bishop g6 and knight e2. Now, what can we say about this position? White is way ahead on development. Black is going to have very hard time completing development here. So what white wants to castle, black has very difficult time to castle. e6 will be met by bishop takes f6. So knight d7 was played, castle, and now e6. I want to point here very original decision was made by Fischer. But if you think about it, since all his thinking in chess was based on developing initiative and logical thinking, next move is unusual but very logical. Bishop takes f6. Here, black has to make decision what to do. Obviously, black has only one goal in this position, is to castle. And white has only one goal in this position as well, not to let black castle. After bishop takes f6, g takes f was played. Now, why not knight takes f6? That's what the most players would have played here. But then d5, creating tremendous problems for black. E takes d will be met by knight takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5. Black will never castle here. b7 pawn hangs, and after c6, rook takes c6 may be played. You can tell it's easy win for white, not to mention rook e1 followed by knight f4. Just take a look at pieces, at activity of the pieces. Black is totally busted here. So on d5, and what should black do then? If they go e5, that's not going to be much of a solution, because knight b5 can be played with the idea knight takes c7 check, queen c7, bishop b5. Also with the idea of going d6. So that's why black chose, after bishop takes f6, to play g takes f. Well, of course, it doesn't change the issue. d5 was still played, and for any cost, black has to avoid opening center. So rook is on f1. So now, if knight e5, then simply queen takes f6, attacking rook on h8. So what was played here is e5. Now bishop b5, and on bishop e7, knight g3. You see, knight will be coming to f5. Black is already lost, I believe. And a6 was played, bishop d3, queen d8, h4. Now, exchanging these bishops will give black totally lost position, because knight on f5 and knight on e4, black will not be able to move at all. So after h4, what white wants to do to play h5 and force black to take on d3. So h5 was played. Now bishop to f5, knight b6, knight c to e4, knight takes d5, rook f to d1. You see, when we talk about piece domination and coordination, it's very hard to to see the clearer picture of domination than here. Rook f to d1, c6, knight to c3, queen b6, rook takes d5, And obviously it's all over. Black forced to take. Knight takes d5. And queen takes b2. Rook b1. Queen takes a2. Rook takes b7. Black has an exchange, extra exchange, but they have no moves. e7 bishop is hanging. If bishop moves, f6 pawn is hanging, not to mention knight c7 check. Black is totally busted, and black resigned. This was played already at the best of the well, any attacking player will be proud to play this kind of game, and this is another demonstration of power of Bobby Fischer. So now, next game I want to go. Now, I'm skipping the World Championship match. The reason I'm skipping World Championship match of 72 because all the games of it very well publicized, and there is nothing I can say to add that Bobby Fischer was dominating Spassky in that match, and I already spoke about the controversy of this match. What happened before the match about preparation. Bobby Fischer was all alone fighting against elite of Soviet chess. Well, he was not playing only Spassky, he was practically playing all the top Soviet grandmasters together because all of them were helping Spassky in the preparation for this match, and also during the match when games were adjourned or something. So that match I'm skipping now, and what I want is to show you, well, as we know, between 72 and 92 Bobby Fischer did not play any tournament games, but what he did, he said he has interest only in abnormal games. Well, he wanted to shuffle chess pieces, maybe something like that, and because this way there will be no well-known theoretical position, and everything will depend on the skill of the player, chess skills, and not on the memorizing theoretical variations. But however, that's why he was not playing. And as I previously told you, he was looking for some match to play in 91, 92. And now that's how we came to unification, reuniting the World Championship match, kind of, in 1992 between Spassky and Fischer again. What I want to look at, the first game. Well, before the first game started, whole world was holding its breath. They wanted to see whether Fischer is the same Fischer was in 72, because no one has seen any games played by him. And there is a first match between Fischer and Spassky, 1992 in Belgrade. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castle, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, castle, h3, knight b8. This is a little awkward move, but it's very well known in modern theory. It's named the Borisenko variation. black is going to put knight on d7 and bishop on b7. So it's very playable variation. d4, knight d7, knight d2, bishop b7. I'm going to go quickly through these moves. Bishop c2, rook e8, knight f1, bishop f8, knight g3, g6, bishop g5, h6, bishop d2. I believe all this is a theory. Bishop g7, a4, c5. It's a balanced position. It's no clear plan for either side. And white plays d5, locking out black's b7 bishop. c4, and now b4 was played. Now move b4. Black does not want to take en passant because that will give white little more space on queen side, although this was a possible opportunity. So Spassky did not play c takes b. He went knight h7. And here Bobby played bishop e3, h5, queen d2, rook f8. Now, here is white's plan. White's plan is to play on the queen side. Rook a3, knight df6, rook ea1. So white wants to gain initiative, gain advantage on the king side, on the a file. But even if this happens, how much can white do? There are no weaknesses on the a file, and black is easily controlling a file too. So, but Fischer did not play a takes b. After rook ae to a1, queen d7 was played. Now rook a2 move. Why is rook a2? Rook a2 can be played and was played only with one idea: to put the queen on a1, to triple on the a file. Rook f to c8, queen c1, bishop f8, queen a1, queen e8. We cannot analyze here some concrete moves because there is nothing happening. And if you point, it's 25 moves and no pawn was exchanged yet. Queen a1, queen e8, knight f1. Now this is very interesting idea. White does not want to open a file until they put all their pieces in the best position. And here comes Fischer's plan. Knight f1, bishop e7. Where is this knight going? Knight d2, king g7, knight b1. Now, what is knight doing on b1? Now, here, white has a plan here. What they want to do when they take and later on penetrate with the rook, in the case of exchanges, they want to play rook a5 and knight a3. There is a target. There is a target on b5. Spassky saw it, and it took him a long time. He didn't want to be passively defending for the rest of the games because white does have ways of increasing pressure on queen side. So Spassky made a very interesting decision. He sacrificed a piece. Knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, f5. Bishop c2, bishop takes d5. Now here, let's assess this, evaluate this position. White is a piece up, but black has connected central pawns, and they have 2 pawns for a piece. And white's pieces do not have targets at this position, so the pawns can be moving in future, and white may be okay then. However, this sacrifice was not sufficient. AB, and rook a7 was played. Now here, black is under severe pressure. They have very good pawns in the center, but white's a file is kicking in at this point. King f6 was played, getting out of the pin. After king f6, knight bd2, connecting the knights. Rook takes a7, rook takes a7, and rook a8. Now what black wants here, black wants to exchange rooks and queens and go to endgame. But in the endgame, black's pawns in the center will totally control white's pieces. And after rook a8 in this position, white played g4. It's very, very interesting move, very interesting decision. Well, Fischer wants to open some position and create some targets on the king side. For example, f5 pawn maybe at some point that may be attacked on knight h4. After g4, Spassky played h takes g, h takes g, rook takes a7, queen takes a7, and f4. Now, why did not he play queen a8? Why didn't he play queen a8? I don't know, but one of the suspicions why he may not have played this move, because I think in this position white has very strong move, knight g5, and knight g5 creates serious problems for black. If they play queen takes a7, then they're gonna lose very important pawn. Knight takes h7, king g7, bishop takes queen, and when black takes the knight, they lose the f5 pawn. So that's not good. So this is not acceptable, and black cannot do that. But what can they do? If knight takes g5, then bishop takes g5 is totally losing for black, because king takes g5, queen takes e7. So after this, in this position, it's already serious problem for Spassky. So he played f4. But on f4, white played bishop takes f4. And why bishop takes f4? Now, when I put this on a computer program, computer programs want to play bishop b6, claiming that white has a clear advantage. Well, I may agree on with that, but white is better. But it's interesting to point how Fischer plays this position. So bishop takes f4. He plays totally for initiative. ef. That's 20 years in retirement. You come out of the retirement, and 20 years after you play game like this. I will talk a little more about it after the game. Now, knight h4, bishop f7, queen d4 check, king e6, and knight f5. Total unconditional domination by white's pieces. After knight f5, gf is not possible because there is a checkmate. So after knight f5, bishop f8 was played, queen takes f4, king d7, knight d4, queen e1 check, king g2, bishop d5, bishop e4, bishop takes e4, knight takes e4. Actually, this is nothing to look at anymore. In 2-3 moves later, black resigned. You can see the overwhelming domination by white's pieces. Now, this game was played 20 years after Bobby retired. It seems like, if you didn't know this fact, it seems like he won in the 72 match against Spassky, and this game was played in 73. No, this game was played in 92, 20 years after. And as I already mentioned, Garry Kasparov said that's the same Fischer we had in 72. But you see, Fischer could beat anybody in a game, in one game in 92. But it's very easy for him to play absolute brilliancy against anybody in the world, but it's very, very difficult to maintain consistency in the way he played consistently on always performing on highest level. Well, first of all, he was in 1992 he was almost 50 years old, and that's the age that is too old for chess, too old not to play chess, to be top chess player in the world. And Bobby was lacking consistency then, and he went on to win the match. Actually, he won the match easily, but his opponent wasn't any younger than him. His opponent was even older, and Spassky was like 6 years older than Fischer. And so this game showed that Bobby Fischer still had stamina and skill to beat anybody in the world, but he said he will not play normal chess again because he was very suspicious that certain players are cheating and they have too much preparation using computers, this and that. And then that's when he said he will play some kind of variety of chess when mostly thinking prevails. And I remember a few years ago, I was contacted by some people from Gothic chess, and they wanted me to get in touch with Anatoly Karpov, my good friend, and make him play Bobby Fischer Gothic chess. Gothic chess is some kind of variety of chess which Fischer wanted to play, and Fischer wanted to play Karpov, and Karpov wanted to play, and there was enough money to put on a stake, but I don't know what was the reason, and for what reason the match never took a place. Maybe it would have taken place if Fischer didn't pass away untimely. So this is my review of Bobby Fischer, brief review actually, because to have full review on Bobby Fischer's life and career, you need about 7, 8, maybe 10-hour DVD. But this is my view. I'm not insisting that my view is absolutely perfect view on Bobby Fischer. That's how I looked at him. These are my opinions, and this is my view at Bobby Fischer as a chess player, and I wanted to pay tribute to this absolutely phenomenal chess player. One other thing I wanted to say, and again, I want to mention this is my view. Fischer made a lot of statements that I would not agree in life. Some political, some racial statements, and I don't share them with him. But I have to tell you this: when you talk about Bobby Fischer, you have to see and analyze him as a chess player. We don't analyze skills of big politicians and presidents of United States. We don't analyze their skills in chess or in playing some cards or in any other aspect of life. So we talk about them only as presidents, what they have done, what they have accomplished. I just gave you a review of the Bobby Fischer as a chess player and some of the human points of him. But of course nobody is perfect, and Bobby wasn't. But I still have great respect and admiration for him as a chess player. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed my views on this greatest player on earth. To conclude, I would say that there is almost no aspect of Bobby's game where he doesn't have instructive examples. He was absolutely greatest players that ever lived, and his true genius, self-thought, and that's what makes him most amazing. Frequently I was asked, who was better, Bobby Fischer or Garry Kasparov? You can't compare these two people. Not because one was much better than the other, because we don't know two things. We don't know how good would have been Kasparov if there were no computers and chess engines that help you to prepare and analyze. We don't know how good would have been without it. Kasparov is absolute genius, of course. And also the other thing we don't know, how good would have been Bobby if he had access to computer programs, to chess engines, and helping them to prepare for certain openings and sharpen his skills. We have no way to compare them. It's very difficult. It's not very difficult, actually. It's impossible. And that's why I would say, but by pure talent, we can, when there is no outside help, it's a lot easier to evaluate the pure talent. And I think Bobby Fischer was absolute genius, and to my standards, by clear indications of a talent, he is number one ever. And that's what I admire greatly. Bobby Fischer, I don't admire his political views, his taste in many different things, but he was absolutely the best, one of the best, maybe the best chess player ever lived.